Hi, everybody, and welcome to Kubert School Live. We have a really special show tonight, and I'm really excited to be here talking to all of you. Before we get started, of course, we got to bring in the special co-host with the most, Mr. Fernando Ruiz. Welcome, Fernando. How you doing, sir?
Hey!
I always love that slide right into first. We didn't even round the bases. You're already sliding just to get to first base.
We got to get that energy going.
I love the energy. Fernando, how have you been? I feel like we haven't been able to do this show in so long. It's so good to be able to have you back on here again.
It's been a while. Hey, we keep busy, but it's good to be able to do this. It's good that we had that little lag, that little pause, because now there's a lot of fresh stuff to talk about.
Oh, we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. And hey, why wait? Let's get this moving along because we have a really incredible guest tonight. She's an extremely accomplished writer, a foodie of all foodies, but overall an incredible writer who's worked on titles such as Red Sonja, Kiss, Poison Ivy, and Wonder Woman, and the upcoming Flash Facts. So let's please welcome the great and wonderful, that's right, I'm going to build it up even more, the great, wonderful, and stupendous Amy Chu. Amy Chu.
Wow. Okay. Hi, guys. You really built me up. I was like, oh my God, how far is it going?
Don't let him down now.
I know, right?
The scene stealer herself, Amy Chu. How are you doing tonight, Amy? Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's tonight, and I hadn't decorated the tree, so I literally just threw up the lights so you can see. I just kind of threw them on there last minute. So
I love the fact that you built R2D2 and have him all set up there as well, ready to go.
Yeah, he's my screen for all the crap that's in the living room. So he's hiding a bunch of junk, basically.
So Amy, how are you doing? What's going on? What is new with you, and what are you currently up to this year?
Well, let's see. Wow. Gee. I don't know, not a lot. Actually, surprisingly, for a while, not a lot really, because a lot of projects got put on hold. But fortunately, suddenly everything came back to life, and so now I seem to be ridiculously busy, including teaching your classes at the Kubert School, and just writing. So yeah, and also trying to keep the local small restaurants afloat by eating food.
There's nothing wrong with that, and definitely support all of your local businesses. Anyone that's watching, get out there, support your local shops. So Amy, let's just talk a little bit about, we're going to go diving right into your origin story, because I think it's always a lot of fun to talk about those sort of things. So would you mind just giving us a little bit of background about yourself and how you started out?
Okay, so yeah, it always depends on kind of the audience. I mean, I have an origin story, but depending on who I'm talking to, I sort of provide more context in my origin story, just because it's kind of not typical. It was by accident. It was by accident. I didn't really know much about comics. I don't know if you know this, Fernando, that it's like, it's sort of by accident, but maybe it was destiny. I don't know.
Have you read comics before?
What's that?
Had you read comics like as a kid?
So I read Archie. So yeah,
we all start there.
Yeah, I actually had to ask my parents about this because it was really kind of bothering me, because most people are like, yeah, I remember the exact issue that got me hooked on comics, and I don't remember any of that. I do remember we had an occasional Archie and an occasional, I'm thinking it might have been Conan. I don't really know, but I asked my mom, like, what was up with that? Because, I really don't remember reading comics on a regular basis, and it wasn't certainly hooking me. It was just like anything else. And she said, well, the reason is because we were too poor to buy comics. We just didn't have comics, so they would bring an occasional thing. But I didn't actually really grow up reading comics in that sense, really. Yeah.
And now you write all of them.
Yeah. It's because I have to catch up. I have to make up for that. I would have liked to say, yeah, I did, but I didn't really. The truth of the matter is I did read some comics in college. And again, that was kind of by accident because I sort of went to a geeky school, MIT. And at MIT at that time, everyone kind of read comics. It wasn't like, oh, do you read comics? It's like, we all watch Star Trek. We all read comics. It was that kind of thing. It's not like something special. And I remember this because it's relevant to my origin story. And I don't want to go on because it takes a while to get through this story. But I was dating a guy at a fraternity. MIT fraternity is very different from regular fraternities. MIT
Animal House.
It's Animal House, but geek style. Like what they would do is they would do really illegal activities like hacking. Like they'll break into like the campus police station and like do weird stuff like rewiring people's stuff.
Wow.
All the things that were exposed tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of a thing. But so I was dating a guy who at the fraternity, and they had a long box there. And one summer they were like, oh, hey, you should read some of these comics. I'm like, sure. I just started reading, and I kind of got hooked because, I was just like, wow, these are not what I expected. I always thought about comics as like just superhero, big muscular flying capes, that whole thing. And these were different comics. They were not exactly superhero. They were kind of like adventure, and I'll get to this because this is like, because it took me a while. I spent one summer reading that entire long box, and then, I graduated and I forgot about it. And fast forward many, many years, my friend Georgia, who is a TV writer, wanted to write comics, and she basically approached me about, well, if she wrote them, I had a bit of a publishing background. Could I publish them? And I'm like, how hard can this be? I kind of remember I read comics in college, I don't really remember exactly the comics, but I'm like, how hard can this be? And so I kind of took a deep dive. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna need some artists. So basically packed up my stuff, went to my first Comic-Con. Do you even know this, Anthony? Do you know this story? It's kind of funny. But what essentially happened is this was 2011, and I'm like, I kind of got sucked in big time because I'm like, this is so cool. This is so great. You can do all these things and make all these stories. But I didn't start writing. I was still on the business side. And I thought, okay, well, how am I going to meet real professionals, right? How am I going to and this was Baltimore Comic-Con, right? I'm like, well, they're all going to be at the Harvey Awards, right? I mean, how else am I going to meet these professionals? So I bought myself a ticket. Yeah, and I didn't realize that you don't do that, right? The Harvey Awards are essentially, a publisher buys a whole table for their honoree, people go up, and nobody really just buys a ticket and shows up. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, well, I don't see how else I'm going to meet people. I'll buy the ticket and I'll show up. And I found out later that what happened, because I showed up and they put me at the head table. And then, like, table number one, I'm like, wow, this is great. Comics is very welcoming. And so I'm sitting there, and it was with Mike. So the honoree was Mike Gold. I don't know. Do you know Mike Gold? He's ex-DC editor. He was getting one of the Lifetime Humanitarian Award. He was getting the Humanitarian Award there. And I'm just like, hey, hi. And he's like, so what's your deal? And I was like, well, I'm here to like learn about comics, I'm trying to make comics with my friend. And he's like, well, have you read comics? And I was like, well, I do remember these comics I read in college. And it took me a while. And I was like, oh, I finally remembered the comics. They were first comics. They were comics with American Flag and John Sable. I really liked John Sable. And he's standing there with a goofy look on his face. He's like, do you even know who we are? Mike Grell was literally sitting right across the table. Because I was just like, I can't remember. I finally can't. So I think they found that very charming and funny. That it kind of was my origin story. They just got such a big kick out of that they're like, anytime you need anything, just let us know, And I had at that time just started writing, but I did not consider myself a writer. I was really just kind of like, I'm not a writer. I'm just going to do this for fun with my friend.
So your friend Georgia, she comes up and she says, hey, I want to write some comics. You're like, that sounds great. I'll help you publish these things. And at what point, do you start saying, you know what, I am going to start giving this a try. I want to start writing these books. And then how did you learn about what to do, how to format these pages? Was it just trial and error, or how did you get to that point?
So she actually talked me into taking an online writing course, which is like what I'm teaching now, right? With the rationale being is that if you're going to be on the business side, you really need to understand how creative people think, because they're not the same. Like I have a business background. I had a business background, and her view was that it's very different working with creative people. So if I take that class, maybe I'll like it, but I'll also understand how the sausage is made, how these stories, how else am I going to do it? I can't manage, publish comics without really knowing what's involved. And I'm like, sure, I'll take this online class. And so lo and behold, of course, I sign up for it and I show up, and it's all guys who are already talking about continuity and all their characters and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I literally didn't know anything. So I did not know anything. I didn't even know who Deadpool was at that time. I did not know if Wonder Woman was DC or Marvel. I know Fernando's like,
I start somewhere.
I feel comfortable talking about this. Before I used to be like trying to pretend I knew. The whole point is just like you can start somewhere. But so I started Wikipediaing everything really quickly. They were already talking about stuff, and I have no idea what they're talking about. But the point of the class was to write, and so half of the class were still talking about continuity, and I'm like, I'm supposed to write. I better write, and there's a deadline for 5 pages. So I wrote, and I met the deadline, while other people are still like, well, I can't do it in 5 pages. I need 10 pages. I'm not ready. I'm not finished, blah, blah, blah. And I did my 5 pages. And the instructor was Andy Schmidt. Andy Schmidt is an ex-Marvel editor. And he was basically like, oh, let's talk about Amy's story. And I'm like, wait, I'm not a real writer, really. I was just really trying to help my friend out. He's like, no, but it's a good story. Let's talk about your story. Let's talk about your process. And I was like, I don't know if there was a process. I just wrote it. So
how long was it until you got your first project? What did you consider to be your first real project working in the industry?
Well, so this is what I figured out pretty quickly, is that if you're going to, and I got the bug pretty early, and went naturally. I think I was only figured out that maybe I should do this. I think after I wrote a few stories, then I was like, well, I really want to do this. And in order for me to do this, I'm going to have to self-publish. And so it wasn't even thinking like, okay, what I really wanted was a byline, just to be like, see, I did it, like I made it. And in order to do that, I was like, well, I'm going to have to write my own stories. I'm going to have to self-publish my own stories, and basically just hustle like crazy. Like crazy, because I may never make it, but I just want to, try. And so 2012 is when I first started really writing and publishing. So 2012 is when I hit a lot of conventions, and I made sure I had a new story pretty much every convention. And I remember this too, because I think it was Joe Quesada, actually. I ran into him multiple times, and I'm basically like, he's like, I remember you because every time I see you, you got something new. And I was like, I think that's good. I think that's good. And then, of course, I never got anything from Marvel. my first gig was DC. So, and that was 2013.
Incredible. Amy, I know that you know this, and Fernando knows this, but I always, I think so highly of your work ethic. You use the word hustle, and you really do. You've always been that way, though, from the way you started to present day. And you'll always be that way. And I think it's absolutely incredible, and you should be really proud of that. I think it's a wonderful thing, and it really, I don't know. It's really a great thing that you do. You work so hard, and you do really great quality stuff. and you should be really proud of that. That's all. I just want to give you that compliment because I think it's extremely well deserved.
Well, I appreciate that. But part of it too is, you know, I feel like I have to hustle because I'm starting so late, you know, like I'm going to die at some point, and I feel like I need to have done all this before, you know, I get too old, you
You know,
know?
everybody's on a different timetable, though. You know, I don't believe you could be, you know, it's ever too late, because it's really the work that's going to speak about you. So
That's true.
yeah,
I understand that now. I still feel a little bit like, okay, you know, at some point people are gonna be like, again, like, when did you actually start? And you know, like,
and
yeah.
actually, if anything, like being a little bit more mature, you're taken a little bit more seriously than if you're, you know, just some kid hustling at a convention.
Well, I do think there's a huge difference because I don't think I could do this if I were in my 20s. You know, like my whole hustle skill set that is like years of, you know, business experience and even writing. I don't think I could have written, you know, in my 20s. I just didn't have that kind of voice or emotion or, you know, yeah. I think this is the right time for me, and you know,
Hey,
yeah.
you really like write everything. Like you don't have any specific genre.
Because I'm unemployed.
Is there a genre that you prefer? Like, is there one that you would like to ever zero in on, or if you had your choice, that's what you would like to do?
Wow, if I had my choice, you know, if I may say, I feel a little bit like, you know, the Coen brothers, when they do films, they try to do a little bit of everything. I'm kind of like that. I mean, my personality is very much like that. Like when buffets were still a thing pre-COVID, I'm like one of those people, like I'll go to a buffet, but I'll have a little bit of everything in the buffet. And I kind of like that for writing. I just like to try a lot of different things. I do get a little like, I don't like to get pigeonholed in one particular genre. But if I have to, you know, I think my, you know, growing up, I read a lot of science fiction. I feel very comfortable with science fiction or any kind of like science fiction actiony kind of stuff.
Hmm.
You know, I feel good about that. My most uncomfortable kind of thing, which I feel like now I have to force myself to do it, is like the sort of romance type stuff, or you know, I don't really want to go there. So, you know, comics, romance. I guess I should try to do it just to show I can do it. But
I'd love to do that.
I'm
Like the old like modern love sort of comics. I'd
yeah,
love to do that.
I think I could do comedy, romantic comedy. You know,
Yes, that'd be even better.
Nora Ephron thing, the kind of like soap opera kind of romance. I'm not sure. You know,
See, I think that that's humorous itself. You know that. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about how that would work out in terms of actually drawing something like it, and I just think, you know, if you had to go to those sort of dramatic pauses on the characters, it's like, do you start doing like a slow, like a bit, you know, you pull back shot and then you start trucking in on those characters. You know, it's just this long beat of time. You could do it for almost 2 pages. People might get angry that you ate up 2 pages of it, but it would be hard.
maybe I can see it. You do sort of situational kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. We're just spitballing ideas. It's all good.
You
We're
now
gonna
you're
create
like,
a whole
oh,
new
you know what?
project right here.
So something that I wanted to talk about, there's actually two things, because I want to go back to your hustle aspect of it again, because I do want to ask, what would you recommend to young writers or artists, and what you would recommend to them about how to build up that hustle, how to get that work ethic going. And then, of course, touch on a little bit of your process on how you write, how you come up with the stories and how you break down your scripts. But if you need to take a pause in between that, because that is super loaded, I understand. So whichever one you want to start on first.
Yeah. First question, in terms of the hustle and advice to people, I do think actually a lot of people have good work ethic, but it's not necessarily the smart ethic. You know, they're working hard at one thing, but they're not strategizing. I think sometimes it's, you know, we sort of get into these things where we're like, well, if I just draw 12 hours a day, you know, if I just work really hard and just become a better artist or a better writer. And I think there's a little bit more to that. It is kind of the strategic hustle you know. But
Mhm.
while you're doing that, you do need to start forming the networks. Are you eating fries, Fernando?
Yeah, no
Yep.
cheating,
Yeah,
Fernando.
no, yeah, I
They're
still,
cold.
yeah, I know,
No
right?
cheating.
No,
Yeah, here,
they're beckoning here.
so I already cheated. I ate all my,
Oh,
I know. No, but if they're
got
cold,
most of mine.
oh,
Come on. We're giving away the secret of the show.
Got an onion.
Giving away the secret.
so here's the secret in the hustle is that you should have fun. It's not necessarily like it's got to be terrible. Like you don't have to self-flagellate and just suffer for your art all the time. There's an element of it. The reason, part of the reason I got sucked into this, I was like, wow, this is a lot of work. I mean, it's not just fun, but the community itself, it was just like nothing I had ever really encountered. And so, there's the networking aspect of, being this business where I just enjoy meeting people and learning about what they like to draw. It's like, oh, you like to draw that? I'll write that for you. So there's that part of it. And I think that is, fundamentally my advice to people who are just getting into it. Stop thinking about it's about me, it's about my art, sure it is, but it's also like comics is a collaboration, and it's really like, think about the other person. It's like, what do you have to offer the other person? And so that's always how I approach anything, is when you're approaching an editor, it's like, publish me. No, what are you looking for? What do you need in a writer, right?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of my thing. It's like, oh, you want obviously you want someone dependable who can turn in things on time. But it's also basically, oh, you have this character. You know what? I can do something with this character. I think I can bring a different take on it that, I think I think it'd sell, But
Mhm.
it's just coming up with new stuff, basically, that for the other person. Obviously, it's for me too, but it's really always thinking about, well, what do I bring to the table? What's my value add, in this situation?
That's great.
And it seems to have worked. I mean, I'm still working.
You're always working. There's always something coming out with your name on it. It's absolutely incredible. I think it's great. And then, of course, the flip side of it is, okay, so once you're hired, I think a lot of people, and I hope you're not divulging any secrets that you don't want to give out, but it's a lot of people always kind of wonder. So, all right, so once you're hired by a company and you come on board, what happens with the writer and the editor? I mean, what's that next step, and then how do you move forward to create your scripts?
Okay, so I think it's situational. It really depends. Sometimes it depends on as you know, I mean, I've worked with you too, before. So my process does change depending on who I'm working with, whether it's the artist or the editor. Because sometimes the editor has a very strong opinion about something, And if
Mhm.
you're hiring me, I basically respect that. It's like, okay, so, this is your take on it. Let me interpret what you're thinking and into something that I can write. Sometimes the editor is like, okay, so it's your show. What do you want to do? So it really depends. My process in general is, and I do get this question a lot. And I had to think about it because I'm really not sure. And I think this is also a product of being, having some work experience from before, or life experience, actually. I think it's life experience, is when you're asked to pitch or when you're asked to come up with ideas. And my rule is, okay, if there's something wrong if I can only come up with one idea, I always pitch at least three ideas, maybe even four. Okay. Because, the danger is, of course, that they don't like your one idea and you got nothing else. Okay. And I think this is a problem for a lot of people. It's like, I got that one idea. Now I'm fixated on that one idea. And the editor is like, nice idea, but already been done, or I just don't like it. And now what else you got? And, so my process from the start is always like, okay, well, let me think about maybe what the editor would really get excited. Because I think life is too short to work on things that you don't like. right? It's the same is true from editor. It's like I want everyone to be engaged in the story. So if I can come up with a pitch that gets everyone like kind of excited, then that's a big win, you know. So there's that process of just the idea generation, and that is I get a lot of ideas from real life. You know, it's just news articles, walking around. And sometimes it's just seeing somebody in a grocery store, you know, and I'll jot a little idea down. So I sock it away in my little list of ideas. It's just that moment where I'm like, oh, that was interesting, you know. And so I kind of resurrect some of those little bits sometimes, and it becomes a whole story.
Love it. So you got your story. You start writing up the script. What are we thinking deadline wise? What do you like? What do you need? What's the perfect schedule for Amy Chu?
It kind of depends on what kind of story it is. Sometimes the stories like come a lot faster. I do like to work, and it depends, because oftentimes I'm working on multiple projects at the same time. So I think it's rare when it's just I'm just dedicated to one project. I would say like a good clip is in general, and this is what I tell people, if you want to make a living off of this, you really should be prepared to write, really a full script in 1 week full time. Just sit down and hammer it out. And if you can do that and also do the hustle, then you can make a living off of it.
Is that like a 20-page script?
20 page, yeah. If you can do that, you can make a living in New Jersey, or even maybe New York, depending on who you're working for. If you're living, say, in the Midwest, Kansas City, then maybe you can do, 2 scripts in a month and you'll be good. Okay. So when I say make a living, this is what I mean. It's like to maintain my residence here, that's kind of the piece I need to go at. So,
is it difficult to, you're talking about writing about so many different scripts at the same time, and is that hard for you to take one hat off and then put on another and have to go into that world and try to switch the voices of the characters? Or are you so in tune with what you're putting down already that it's easy for you?
It's not. No, I don't usually have a problem with that at all. It's kind of like I got 2 kids, and do I mix them up? Only sometimes, because that's it. That's the other thing. I'm always multitasking about a lot of different things. So I never get confused. It's just like sometimes you kind of have a vibe. You're like in a groove with one script, and if I'm in that space, then I'll just keep going until I run out. Usually, so I do think people sort of mistake. There's a sort of thinking like it must be so fun. You just write and come up with these ideas. And the real thing about especially comic book writing is that it's problem solving. It's a puzzle. You're trying to figure out the puzzle. It's like a crossword puzzle. And so sometimes you're on a good groove and you're trying to figure it out because you're working at, you sort of have the plot, but it's the characters are not quite gelling, and you got the ending, but you don't have the middle. And so you're working at it. And sometimes I'm doing pretty well on that one script, and I'll go as far as I can. But then at some point it's just like, I'm not sure what to do with this transition. I'm not sure how to do the scene transition. So I may just put that down and I may switch to another script, and then I'll just go into that mode, because generally speaking, these scripts are all really different too, so it's not like I'm like still in, superhero land, and now I'm switching over to fantasy land, and I can't, there's really not confusing.
That's great. We have a question from the audience. I'm going to pull on up for you. Let me make sure I got the right one. From a writing perspective, is it easier to work on a miniseries because it's a defined story arc within 4 to 6 issues, or doing an ongoing series?
So that's a good question. I have to say, actually, in some ways, doing the miniseries is harder because you really actually have to write the whole thing before you even, like when you're doing the outline, you got to work it all out in advance. and you're going for a definitive ending. Whereas an ongoing series, depending again which character or what franchise it is, or if it's creator owned, you may just keep going on an episodic basis without necessarily knowing where you're going. So I think miniseries are a lot harder in a lot of ways because you're working out, you got to work that whole thing out before you even start writing issue 1, at least in my opinion, especially in you're pitching for a licensed, you're pitching for something that's licensed. You really need to show that you got that whole thing worked out in the ending. And ongoing, I think, again, depending on how much they trust you or if it's your own, you may do it like, for example, Bill Messner-Loebs when he was doing Journey, with, what was his name, Wolverine McAllister. That was kind of like, it was just going and going, like every issue would be sort of a new kind of episode, and I get the sense that he didn't work everything out ahead of time. He just kind of built the story as he was going along, like a journey, right?
It's funny because I'm just thinking about back when we worked together in terms of like different books and things going on at once. And I remember you were writing Red Sonja, Kiss, Green Hornet all at the same time, and I mean, you were able to kind of function within all of those different sort of stories. And you brought up the licensing aspect of it. What is it? People don't really quite understand the licensing aspect of comics. And, it's a great way for smaller publishers to kind of have a name value and title in order to get people to want to pick up those books. But what they don't understand that there's a lot of levels of approvals that are involved. What is it like working on a licensed book? And can you explain a little bit of the process of that to the viewers?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, I mean, most work for hire, which is what I am as a freelancer, with any kind of property, that's a licensed property. Usually somebody else owns the IP. And so you are a hired gun, basically. Somebody's entrusting you with these characters in this universe. And I think it really varies from license holder to license holder, what the experience is. Sometimes, as you know, they don't necessarily even get involved. It's just kind of a monetary decision, and then some it's their baby and they get really active in it. So you just kind of have to assess what the situation is, most of the time, and I enjoy it because to me it is, it's not like I don't like to write my own stories. I think for some people, that's really the only thing they want to do. They don't want to work on other people's stories. But for me, I like it because it's kind of a challenge. Is that, okay, so I see what's out there and I want to do better. I want to, I want to show that I can do the best Green Hornet story I can possibly do, or Deja Thoris, bring my take to it.
And I'm doing that too at the same time.
Yeah. So Princess of Mars, and that was, and I enjoy it because the challenge is there. Edgar Rice Burroughs, these are classic stories, and I think people are like, oh my God, are you like? I'm not necessarily nervous. It's just that, if you like, I like to research a lot. I go and I take a deep dive and I try to figure out, okay, what is the true essence of this character or this universe, and I think about the audience out there, and I'm like, well, what is going to make them happy first? Okay, what is going to make them happy? And then the second criteria I think about is like, okay, and then what is going to make a new reader pick up this? So I think in like multiple levels, while I'm sort of concocting, hopefully, a good story, that makes everyone happy.
So we just also got another question, and I think this might be a nice way to kind of touch on some things for you. But Drew Hoffman is asking, is there any chance of another Poison Ivy series? Your take was the best.
Well, that is so nice. Thank you. Yeah. And that's kind of crazy because that was my first book. Poison Ivy was my first series, So, and that was stressful because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually have done that. So I don't know. That's up to DC. But I did. actually, I just got sent the advanced reader copy for Flashbacks, and they let me do a poison ivy and spoiling story in this. So it's kind of like a little nod to the original Cycle of Life and Death, but a little bit kid style. So so there's that. So I think I don't think there's necessarily an unwillingness to do poison ivy, whatever. But I thought that was kind of fun, So I did pitch something a while back. I probably should just be a little more aggressive and revisit it and just see if there's interest, because it seems like people love poison ivy in general. Every time you go to a convention, there's a lot of poison ivy. I think it's just finding the right story and the right timing, and who knows? It's I'd love to do a second. I'd love to do the story I pitched, but we'll see.
That's great. So there you go, Drew Hoffman. If you want a semi-sequel, go pick up Flashbacks in February. There you go. There's your answer.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Okay. This is where we're going to make the weird transition in the show. All right. This is where we're going to start talking hobbies. And I hope that I can call it a hobby, Amy, but you are, is the correct term a foodie?
So I feel like that term is a little problematic. It sort of implies a sort of hoity-toityness, of like cuisine or something. And I enjoy my food. So I like to say I'm a comfort foodie. It's not about the price tag. It's about the quality of no matter what it is. I enjoy eating, and I enjoy eating out, and I enjoy eating with my con friends, so.
Now, is that something that you were always interested in? Because I remember going to San Diego, and it was a wonderful time. We all went out to a restaurant. I think it was you, Mike McCone, myself, and there was one other person, and I'm blanking on who it was, and I'm hating myself for this.
Was it Matthew Clark, maybe? I'm trying to remember, what year was this? This was
maybe about like 2-3 years ago, something like that. But I remember we went out, and I remember it was a great restaurant. It was incredible. They did some really interesting things with the food, and I was just like, I would have never have gone here if it wasn't for Amy Chu, because she knows all of the best stuff. It's incredible. And it was a great time. And so I always see your posts, and you're always doing different things with the food and whatnot. And so were you always this way?
Like, what happened?
Is this something that you got into more?
I think I wasn't always that way. I was raised, like I said, my parents were quite poor, so I was raised on McDonald's for the most part. But I think my journey began as an adult. You start going out more and more, and I think it really took root when I worked in Hong Kong for a couple of years. And that's when you're like, oh my God, people really like food here in Hong Kong. It's like there's some really great restaurants, and you hang out with a certain crowd who are really into like partying and going out and spending a lot of money on food. And that's where I was like, oh my God, this is a whole new thing. And then sort of I think it became even more of a thing when I started doing a lot of conventions, because I'm traveling anyway. I'm in a new city. I want to explore, like Kansas City. I hit 5 barbecue places in 2 days. I almost died of like the meat sweats. It was just like, it was great. It's like these kind of things. It's like part of it is like experiencing life. But also, like you said, it's like, so I always do my research. I find the restaurants, and then I round up people. It's like, who's going to come with me? Because I don't want to be eating all this meat by myself. It's part of the experience.
I love that. Well, I think it's time that we get into experiencing a little bit something special tonight on Kubert School Live. And I think it's time we break out the big surprise to everybody. Amy, if you would be so kind as to reveal what we're going to be munching on live tonight.
I don't know if it's such a big surprise because I sort of like tweeted out, but it is the McRib, which
Yes.
I put on a little Wedgwood plate just to make it a little fancy.
Well, I gotta say that I've kept mine in a bag.
Okay.
The fries are starting to grease through my bag, so that's a good sign. I'm always happy to see that. And Amy, I was hoping that you would kind of lead us through.
Oh no, it's a very messy sandwich. Okay, this is your first one, right?
This is the first time I've ever had a McRib. The last time that McRib came out was, I think, around. Oh man, Fernando's is drinking his French fries.
This is a whole nostalgia.
I want them to go to waste.
I don't know if you
I'm
can
not going to waste the salt.
You can see that
Mm.
there. Look at the sauce too. So Anthony, this is. I feel like okay. So let us first. This is a messy sandwich because it is like it's too easy to deconstruct it. You got the onion, so we can use this as a metaphor for like a narrative.
Okay.
But it's a tricky sandwich because it doesn't stay together as well as I think it should. Yeah. But I think that is part of the experience. That is part of the experience is like getting in a little mess. Oh, you see, you're furrowing now. Okay, so we're gonna do this, right?
I'm so intrigued by it. There's a lot of buildup to this for me. I'm not gonna lie.
There is a lot of buildup, and I think it's important to remember the context of this sandwich because what this is cultural nostalgia. It's not just about the taste; it's about the whole thing of being an American.
I mean, it's already starting to.
Okay, so are we going to do this? We're going to do this. Fernando's already eating.
It's spongy and bouncy, like a horrible sandwich of lies and deceit.
It is not. It is not. This is why we're so divided. Okay, we need to appreciate and respect everyone's point of view, including the sandwich, of which Anthony's going to try. Okay.
You're taking first bite, Amy.
Okay. Fernando's already eating. So here we
go. Go for it.
What do you think?
I want to get the pickle and the onion.
The pickle and the onion are key. Okay. And that, again, is the Popeye chicken experience. The pickle is key. So when I say I'm a foodie, this is like, it's just appreciating, all the things that are brought together here. The flavors. So
that's not bad. I do like it with the pickle and the onion, though. I think that I agree with you. That's key. You got to have that.
Yeah, I would not eat it without. I mean, then all it is sauce. Okay. The truth of the matter is, you could make this with tofu, and it probably tastes exactly the same. They should make a tofu.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what it is.
Don't ask. That's not the point, okay? The point is just to enjoy,
Just eat it.
Yeah, just eat it. It's like a little bit of,
If anybody that's watching this, I apologize as we're all sitting here eating. JC Dragon 81, he makes a great point. If we're eating the McRib without a spot on your shirt from it, like it's now starting to just drip randomly. I don't know how it's been dripping anymore.
Don't wear a white shirt,
That's why I wore maroon or whatever this is. It's gonna match the barbecue sauce.
And then you wash it down with a little bit of Red Bull, like a real creator, because I got a lot of stuff to write later. Bill, no, we don't want to go there. We're just not going to talk about the process of how this was made, but just enjoy how somebody put it together for us. No question.
Really good.
It's meat. Good for you.
I would recommend this to someone. Yeah. I like the roll. It's got like a better quality. Well, I don't want to say quality.
It's like a I don't know, like kind of a hoagie submarine style roll. We should do this with the Impossible Burger because I think that's also another whole. We could talk about that. I'm talking about the Impossible Burger, the Impossible Whopper, the Burger King.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So it's funny, Art Rich Studio, we had just been talking about the process of creating comics.
Mhm.
We had to get into
Mhm.
eating the McRib, because one of the things that Amy, at least I admire about her, is her comfort foodie status. And, I think that it's an incredible thing, and she has really great opinions on it. And you know what? With the McRib being out now, I thought it was a great opportunity to get us all involved and have a little chit chat about it.
It's communal. In this year of COVID, we can still do this kind of thing, which I hope some people out there are also enjoying a McRib or some, analog burger.
That's also what's key about the McRib, is that it's a seasonal food. It's not always available. That makes you appreciate it all the more. This is special.
We can also talk about that from the business standpoint of, that's definitely calculated strategy. Now, it's interesting, though. I did have a McRib last year, just sort of coincidentally, by accident. I was with a bunch of other creators at the Algerian con, and the layover was through Germany. And apparently Germany has McRibs year-round for some weird reason. Yeah, that's just always on the menu. So we're in the airport, and I'm like, is that a McRib? We're like, oh my God, we got to go. So we ate a McRib in Germany, and we would have brought one back for you, but I don't think that would have been a good thing on the plane for you.
No, I have no doubt that sandwich would stand the test of time by just literally leaving it in the bottom of a bag.
I'm worried about the sauce. The sauce.
Oh, I feel so bad. Oh, wait, there we go. The gem of a man himself. Thank you so much, sir. I hope you're enjoying watching me make a fool of myself eating a sandwich.
You're supposed to go out to Queens, because Queens has the most amazing food.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And we were in CCXP. I was in the CCXP with Jose Luis, and the food in Brazil is just phenomenal.
I've heard, we just did, we had, unfortunately, CCXP had to be virtual this year.
Yeah.
So we just did some live videos, which were really great. Fernando, Lee Weeks, Erica Schultz. It was a really wonderful time doing the videos, and it was a great show. So we really appreciated that. And I've heard nothing but positive, great things about the people down at CCXP. We are getting a few questions.
Okay.
And I hope you don't mind if I ask you. Some of the questions are kind of repeat from what we covered already before. So we're only going to go a few more minutes, folks. So if you have any questions, make sure that you get them in there now, okay? And if I'm not bringing up your questions, it's because they were covered in the beginning of the show. So just feel free to hit rewind and check it out. So I'm going to try to see what we can do here. So talking about your first job writing Poison Ivy, how did that come to be? Did you openly pitch it? Did they see your work that you had been doing and then asked you to pitch for it? How did that come to be?
So it was kind of interesting. I first of all, I never thought I would get it, because I think there's sort of word on the street that DC was looking at doing something. So I think that there were a lot of writers interested in it already. And I literally had only done a couple short stories, certainly not a series. But I was still trying to kind of put feelers out. I did not make a real pitch exactly, because I had to think about it. And my memory might not be quite right. But I did kind of send out some feelers to different people. And so I'm not even sure how exactly it happened, but it is a kind of a funny story. I did, I think the main thing is that when it came down to it, almost everybody was pitching eco-terrorism as the Poison Ivy thing. Like the Poison Ivy as an eco-terrorist was their thing. That was like, of course, that's what Poison Ivy is about. And I was like, I was thinking about Poison Ivy as a scientist. I'm like, I think we can do something, because she's supposed to be super smart, like Harley is, but she's not doing anything smart. She's just going around,
Right.
full of death. I'm like, what does that have to do with science? And again, that doesn't sound like a really compelling pitch, but and sort of the background of everyone else kind of doing similar pitches. And I'm thinking, yeah, I want to do something with her as a scientist and something like that, you know? And I don't remember, I think I sort of sent off a couple ideas, and I think they maybe went through Bobby Chase. I think so. I have to go through my email sort of thing. But the funniest thing is that I get a phone call, you know, and, you know, nobody really calls, and you pick up because it's going to be spam. It's going to be someone, you know, trying to sell you something. So I never pick up my phone, and I listened because there was a voicemail, and it was, "Hi, this is Dan DiDio." You know, it's like, I got something you might be interested in. Call me back. And he hangs up. I'm like, hey, was that Dan DiDio, or am I being punked? And he didn't leave a message, like a phone number. I'm supposed to call him back, and there's no number, right? So like, that was really weird. And so like, now what? Fortunately, I think he called back a week later, and he's like, yeah. So he, and I'm thinking, okay, if this is legit, he probably, you know, got something like, I don't know, you know, like a kid's thing for me to do, because I'm new, you know. And that's when he was like, oh, I was thinking about poison ivy, you know. And I had done something for Vertigo that never got published, and it was a murder mystery. He's like, what do you think about doing something like that where she's a scientist, but it's a murder mystery? And I'm thinking, yeah, that would work, you know. So that's when I pitched. That's when I came out with the whole mini series. It took a long time because I basically had to write the whole thing before getting it approved. And especially because Dan was kind of invested in it too, because he likes poison ivy. So, you know, so that's an example of what I was saying earlier, is that you kind of have to figure out what's the person's interest, you know, does he care or does he not care? And he did care. So, you know, it was, so it was a lot of work trying to work all these things out, because when you're doing a murder mystery, you have to have an ending. You can't just kind of let it go the way it's going to go. You really have to work all that stuff out, and then work your way backwards so that hopefully people are surprised. So, so that's kind of the story, you know, and it worked out.
And then, of course, you know, like I said, we're going to be wrapping up momentarily. But one of the big questions I always do like to ask, especially with everything that's going on currently in the world, especially due to COVID, is where do you see comics going? And what sort of hopeful message do you have for future creators to feel empowered to continue creating great work?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, you know, it's a kind of a funny time, but I think it's a great time because, in my view, okay, this is me channeling my business background. You know, I do have an MBA, and, that technology drives a lot of the of content creation, of like what we create. You know, so if you follow, just like as we went from radio to TV to, you know, what it's cable and all that stuff evolves, but certain things never go away because radio is still around, right? I think we're now at a phase where we can have our cake and eat it too in so many fronts, and but it is the medium that defines kind of the content we're creating. So for example, webcomics. I think webcomics is a huge thing right now. And sometimes I feel like, oh, that's not really, I mean, obviously it's comics, you know? So you can now pick and choose which sandbox you want to play in, or you want to play in all of them, great, you know? But that technology has also enabled us to make our own stories much easier than back in the day. Like I said, you know, if I were doing this, you know, when I was still in college, I wouldn't be able to do it so much as maybe zines, but, you know, offset printing is just out. You know, now we've got print on demand, digital printing. You can do a lot of stuff just on your own or just put it up on the internet. And I think that the barriers to entry to making your own comics is so much lower, in my opinion, than ever before. So this to me is very exciting for anyone who has some interest. Just do it. Just do it, you know, put it up. You know, work on it. It's just, you know, there used to be a time when you had to be in New York, go to Marvel offices, show up, knock on someone's door. It's all on the internet. You know, you can, you know, I'm not saying spam editors, but, you know, it's accessibility is a lot easier now. So, you know.
Oh, I think that's wonderful.
Is that hopeful? I think it is, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Made me feel good.
take one of my writing classes, and
So, of course, if you wouldn't mind telling folks how they could follow you and what you're going to be up to and what you're doing, feel free to give us some information there and what they can look forward to.
Oh, sure. Well, so you can follow me at Amy Chu. You can see that there. At Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. So I do the food pictures on Instagram. It says Amy_Chu. I do more kind of business occasionally. Okay, so I do talk about food on Twitter, but I will also occasionally talk a little bit about process or just stuff on Twitter. I'm also at iWriteComics.com. And my Facebook is also iWriteComics. So.
Great. And then just to remind fans, of course, she's got upcoming flash facts that'll be out in February. That's really exciting.
Oh, I forgot. I do actually have also another book. This is my creator-owned with Janet Lee. So this came out through Penguin Random House this summer in the year of COVID. So that's a sequel to the kids' book. And yeah. If you can get a hold, because we talked a lot about poison ivy. This is out of print now, unfortunately. So if you see one, grab it, because it's hard for me to even get it at this point. If you find one, I'll sign it for you.
So. And then Fernando, if you have anything you'd like to chime in with before we do our hugs and goodbyes.
No, this was great. I learned a lot from Amy tonight.
So.
No, I always learn from hearing everybody's stories, and I think we all think of different things and different ways to do things. So it's always interesting to me how people got into the business and what their do's and don'ts are in this business. So. I do a lot of listening in these interviews, and tonight was really fun. And I got to eat a McRib for the first time in 5 years.
Amazing.
Well, go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry.
No. I just say it's amazing to be able to do the McRib experience with both of you. It's kind of special.
It's all the more special now.
But Fernando, I got to make sure I give you a shout out because. Starstruck is available, folks. Make sure you get out there and pick up the book.
Well, it's only available on diekittydi.com and in the Astro Comics eBay store. If you look at it, you can buy it directly from us. And for the real collector, the Die Kitty Die box set. Look at that, the whole Die Kitty Die trilogy in this nice box.
Done by Fernando Ruiz, Dan Parent.
And me.
It's wonderful. It's an incredible book. Highly recommend it to you guys.
Thank you very much.
So Amy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This really was a lot of fun. And I agree with Fernando. A lot of times I have to ask the questions because otherwise, there would be no questions. But I love hearing what you have to say because I feel the same way that Fernando does, and I learn a lot from each person. And I've always admired your work ethic. I've said it to you a million times, and I just think that you're an awesome person, and I'm very lucky to know you. And I think everybody that listened to you tonight was lucky to hear from you as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And I just want to say to everyone that is watching, if you are interested in the Kubert School, please do a favor and visit kubertschool.edu. You can also apply online today. Right now, we're running a special from December 7th through the 18th, where you can apply online at kubertschool.edu for free. Type in code HOLIDAY on the application form at the payment receipt section at the top. Very easy to get to. Okay, folks, kubertschool.edu, like I said before. And for anyone looking for art supplies, make sure that you visit the Kubert Art Store. All of your art supply needs are right there, from pens to pencils to brushes to paper to canvas. It's all there waiting for you, so be sure to check it out. And like I said before, Amy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was really fantastic. I look forward to being able to get back out on the convention trail and have some more incredible memories built up with you. And thank you again.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks again and have a great night. We'll see you all